Hi, fellow rewatchers. Before we start today's episode, we wanted to address the content of this podcast in light of the recent attacks in Paris and Beirut. This episode does contain a mention and short discussion of a terrorist attack in Paris as related to the plot of episode 14 of Highlander the series, For Evil's Sake. We recorded this episode over a week before the harrowing attacks on Friday, and felt it necessary to acknowledge the timing of this week's episode in the wake of these real-life tragic events. Highlander Rewatched is saddened by the events this weekend, and our hearts go out to all those affected. Highlander has always had an international fan base in the truest sense. Paris served as the physical and emotional backdrop to the series and gave Highlander the je ne sais quoi that set it apart from other shows at the time. We hope that everyone's loved ones and friends are safe, and we hope this episode can help lighten your day. We have chosen not to edit this episode in light of the attacks. With that said, on with the episode.
You're mad, Kyler.
Maybe. Maybe I'm just trying to excel at what I do. Didn't you ever want to be the best at something?
But it means nothing to you?
On the contrary, it means everything. I would have thought you'd have understood me better than that. I was never very good at anything else. As a kid, there was always someone faster or smarter. Did you know I have a very pleasant singing voice? It's good, but not good enough for grand opera. It's the same with my tumbling.
So you kill.
We all have to do something.
Welcome to Highlander Rewatched, the podcast where we rewatch each and every episode of Highlander the series and discuss it in detail.
To kick it off, we're going to start with a quick question, which is, what time period would you most like to see a flashback of in this show?
This is Keith speaking, one of your rewatchers. I think my favorite time period to flashback to is like Victorian era London, kind of like a Dickensian sort of time period.
You piece of shit.
Is that yours?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
So, I think I would do like a Dickensian London town. Partially because I like the way... it's mostly because I like the way they dress.
Yeah.
Even though it's like the dirtiest and dingiest like era, it would seem. I like the way they dress. I like the way they talk. Harry Potter.
Well, yeah, I was thinking it'd be cool, like a Highlander Immortal Sherlock Holmes mystery. That could be cool.
Yeah.
Fertile ground there.
How about you?
I'm going to say I want to see Duncan in the United States in like the 1970s because I want to see him in like bell bottoms.
Oh, that would be awesome.
And like wearing a vest, like a leather vest with like the long hair going. I think it would be good for some laughs.
Very good.
Also, I would really like it if he had really strong opinions about Nixon in some way. Maybe one way or the other.
Or like you could see like a transition of Duncan as like 50s suburban house dad, and then he like starts taking the LSD and getting a little wacky and lets his hair down a little bit. That could be fun.
All right, so we are your rewatchers, Keith, Kyle, and Eamon. And to start off this episode, we're going to just talk real quickly about some reader mail we've got regarding the episode Revenge is Sweet, which was the episode starring Vanity and Christopher Orth. So Dominic S. wrote in a couple times with some trivia for us. So I'm going to paraphrase his emails just to keep things moving along. But one thing he mentioned was that German TV had actually partially financed that episode of Highlander. I guess, and in some cases... more of the season. So they wanted Christopher Orth to star in it. Like that was part of the package deal that they would put up some financing money. They got kind of first air rights in Germany, but Christopher had to star in it. Also, he mentioned that the episode order in Europe is different than in America. As far as like all the early episodes, like all the Vancouver, Seacouver episodes in America, they were all kind of jumbled out of order. Like, and we mentioned some production numbers early on in the podcast. They didn't match up with the air dates at all. Apparently in Europe, they were all aired in their correct production number order all through the season, which is cool. And then he also mentioned that in the UK, that they released The Gathering, the very first episode, the pilot, and Revenge is Sweet as they edited it together in a confusing movie. So both of these plots, like Vanity and Slan the Cat, were going on at the same time. I can't even imagine how that pieces together. I'm kind of really curious. I'd want to see it.
I'm guessing
Insanity.
it doesn't. I see what you did there.
Yeah, I don't like how could you make those two into one thing?
I don't know.
I'm just picturing it being a super intense editing project where they force Connor to talk to Vanity at some point through the power of editing.
Also, there are 2 kidnappings by 2 different people.
Yeah.
It's just like,
So they meet Richie in the same episode he becomes a car salesman.
yeah.
All right, so jumping into episode 14, For Evil's Sake. This first aired February 20th, 1993. It was directed by Ray Austin, which is surprising. It's not actually a French director for this production.
Yeah.
And he's the one that's done all those Zorro things. We've talked about him a bunch. The writer on this episode is David Abramowitz. He wrote the teleplay, and then the story for it was written by...
Fabrice Biolkowski.
Yes, and who was a French writer. But we should talk a little bit about David Abramowitz. He was like the creative script supervisor and one of the producers on the show. He didn't write a lot of episodes, but yeah, he was like the creative consultant. And when he really stepped in, like kind of around this period, like midway through the first season, the show really changed. I think you can credit him a lot with turning Highlander around. I think it was, we've talked a bunch about how it's still kind of finding its footing these early episodes, and I think he's the one that you can really give pretty much all the credit to like making it find its voice and giving it direction. And so yeah, he worked on most of these episodes from here on out, and it's really great.
Good job, David.
Indeed.
And then we have Peter Howitt as the evil mime Kyler.
Kyler.
It took me a long time to figure out what this guy's name was. Like the first 3 times people said it, I was like, huh?
Yeah.
Kyler.
It's even harder to spell. I had to look it up, and it's not spelled.
There's an extra U in there.
A U in there that I don't think we're used to.
Kyler Minogue.
Very good. Very good.
But yeah, he's done a decent amount of TV, but like he's transitioned into acting. I noticed, like in 2007.
From acting to acting.
I'm sorry, he transitioned to directing.
Oh, directing.
It's method acting. I have to,
There you go.
pretend to be an actor to be an actor. No, but he started doing directing. He actually directed Johnny English, which is like the Rowan Atkinson
James Bond
like spoof thing.
What about Johnny English Reborn?
I don't know if he directed that one.
I just want to say something about this episode before we get into it. The screenshot on Hulu, if you have Hulu, is just a mime screaming in a person's face, and it's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Is that in the episode?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember that part.
Yeah. It's great.
And so let's get the IMDb episode description here. Duncan witnesses a murder committed by a mime.
Boom.
Yep, that's it. And he recognizes it as the MO of the assassin Kyler, an immortal responsible for the death of a French baron Duncan once protected.
An immortal fucking assassin mime.
Mime, yep.
Mime.
Perfect. Also, just to say for a second, this was definitely a title in search of an episode, right? For Evil's Sake. Like, it's just kind of a punny name, I guess, but why is that the name of this episode?
I have no idea.
Makes no sense because Kyler's evil, Kyle.
Yeah, so is every other villain we've encountered ever forever in the show.
True enough.
So someone just had that, like, in the bin somewhere, and like, all right, yeah, whatever, we can't think of something better. I think they went through, like, 10 different mime puns before they got to this one.
Ooh, what could be a good mime title?
The Silence of Evil.
Mime time?
Mime time. Mime's running out.
Mime
is of the essence.
That's good.
Quickening in a box.
Hey.
Mime Angelou.
What?
I don't know. Sorry, everyone. So the episode starts with a mime performing on the street. And can I just say, I mean, I know mime is a French art. Nobody has ever enjoyed a mime's performance this much in history.
Yeah, the crowd is loving
They
this.
are eating this shit up with a spoon.
And it's not even that elaborate. Like, it's just some guy, like, kind of gyrating.
He's walking
and
on
going,
his
like,
head at first.
Yeah.
They intercut between 3 different mime scenes, I guess. So the
Right.
first mime is in front of like a restaurant or something. He's bouncing around, and then he ends up pulling out a gun on this guy who just looks like Roger Sterling from Mad Men. Yeah. And then it cuts So we're out in like the burbs somewhere. It's like
And it looks like it's the morning.
yeah,
And like this guy's walking to work or something. And this
Maybe.
mime pops out of
like
nowhere.
behind a tree. Yeah, there's
Which-
nothing around.
This is alarming. Nobody else is around. If a mime just popped out,
That's nightmare shit.
yeah.
yeah, it's not like he's putting on a show for a crowd. It's like a single man.
Yeah, this is
walking
like
to work.
it is coming for you.
Yeah, so he pulls out a fake knife,
Right.
and like stabs the guy.
This
and it
is
doesn't
this
work.
is where the Hulu screenshot is for all
Oh,
you
okay.
Hulu viewers. It's one of these parts.
And then we cut again
Huluers, I like that.
another restaurant. We cut again to another mime at a different restaurant, and he pulls out a giant gun and confronts like an old man. So anyway,
Yeah.
all these people are like fairly terrified by this, like. And so the one mime pulls out a gun. This old man like cowers in terror. Like
Here's the thing.
he gets up. Nobody does anything.
Right.
And he like trips over chairs. He's fall like this is nuts.
Nobody's doing anything. Well, with the guy
Well,
with the
like what? What are we suggesting that they do in this circumstance?
I would at least run.
run or like scream, call for the police. Like,
I would run.
well, when he pulls the gun out initially, nobody reacts at all.
Right.
Like they're all just sitting there like, oh, this got a gun, and the mom's like, oh, yeah, look, I have this gun here. Like weird.
Well, it is unsettling, but like people are like, oh, it's part of the show.
Well, okay, I'll give that a pass, I guess. But like then all these mimes like deploy their scheme, which is like the guy fake stabs the guy, and he's like, "Oh, it's fake." The guy pulls the trigger on the one gun, and
A flag
comes out, and the
yeah.
other gun is a lighter.
Right.
The thing that killed, like these people are terrified. Like again, especially that old man who is tripping over.
he's on the
chairs.
ground.
He's on the ground,
Yeah.
scooching back. He's like, "No, don't kill me!" Oh, he's not yelling or anything. But,
It's only the old man who's truly terrified.
I guess
Yeah.
They look
Yeah.
uncomfortable, like,
but then when it's revealed that it's a joke, everybody thinks this is the funniest
Yeah.
thing they've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like the guy who's on the ground, he's like, "Oh, you got me! Like you weren't gonna
He's not
shoot
like
me in the
quaking
head."
with
yeah,
rage.
I made a fool of myself. Thank you.
But then the big twist is then we do kind of round robin back around to this whole thing, and it turns out that was a ruse, and all these weapons like are activated and they're now real. So the one guy gets shot in the chest, the one guy gets stabbed in the chest, and then the third guy, the old man, gets a headshot. Like this
Yeah.
is like
No,
John,
there are
this
two-
is like John Wick, and he's just
Yeah.
bam right in the head.
There are
It's
two
like,
headshots.
it's like this is 2 p.m. UPN
Yeah.
afternoon television.
It's brutal.
and there are John
see
Wick
the bullet
style
hole on his
heads.
forehead.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, which I thought that was really well edited, actually.
Oh, I like the way all these things
Yeah.
cut together. It's fun.
Yeah, that was clever.
I have a problem with the park guy though, because there's nobody around. Why don't you just run out and fucking stab him? Like,
The park guy is out of place.
yeah, there are no witnesses. Like, just stab him. Why?
Yeah.
Why? There doesn't need to be a ruse.
Yeah, well, I had
And
notes
you
on this
successfully
later.
stabbed him the first time.
Yeah.
It's not like he tried to block you the first time and you went, oh, look,
Yeah.
it's just fake, and then you stabbed him.
I was going to bring this up later. Yeah, this whole scheme of the mime thing, like Duncan brings up
mime
later.
time.
Mime time. Duncan brings up that like the reason the assassin chooses to be a mime is because people lower their guard, and like none of this ever works in the episode. Like these people all had their guards lowered anyway. Like the
Yeah.
one guy was just coming out of a restaurant. Like he could have easily just walked up and shot him anyway. Like
Yep.
this idea of like people lowering their guard didn't really matter.
Apply. I mean, it's
At
like-
least in this instance,
Yeah.
we'll talk later about the flashback where I think it actually does make a difference. But yeah,
Right.
in the present time of these murders, this didn't need to be as complicated as it seemed.
So in the third one, Duncan just happens to be returning from Cookie Town with his groceries, and he sees the mime escaping, or does he witness the shooting?
He hears, I think, the
He
gun.
hears the shooting, runs back, and sees the mime trying to escape.
And he throws his groceries at
Yeah,
him.
he
I'm
throws
Hits
like
him
a
with a baguette.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Well, he is in France, so. But the mime like breaks away on this motorcycle, which is pretty cool. Mime cycle.
I think you just wrote the name of the episode.
So we cut after this, and the police are now on the scene investigating. We meet 2 new cops.
Yeah, thank God. What we really needed was more cops.
Yep.
Right. So we meet Inspector LeBron.
Inspector Bald.
Inspector Bald.
LeBald.
Yeah.
And Officer Soul, or Inspector Soul. LeBron is asking Duncan questions about how this went down. Duncan doesn't really have too many answers, I guess, for him, and is, as usual, a little dickish.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then, so LeBron talks about, like, how this murder went down, and he was like, the Jihad swore there would be retribution? Anyone catch that line?
What? I missed this.
Yeah, no, he said it, and I wrote it down because I wrote, what? Because I guess we're supposed to, at some point, they really underplay this, that there was like a terrorist attack, like in the 80s or something like that. So anyway, there's like this terrorist attack by the Jihad, I guess, which is a bunch of white dudes.
Yeah.
But in any case, they apparently were responsible for this in some way, and I have no idea what cues him in.
It's because all the people were connected to it.
Right, they all participated in
There's
like,
the
conviction.
prosecutor Barrett, he says, Judge Belson, and I don't think they say the third person's name. I didn't get that.
Old man.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was like the judge, the prosecutor, and like the head officer on it was what it was supposed to be. And though it now occurs to me that the Jihad, whoever this terrorist organization is, probably hired Kyler.
Yeah, I think that's probably
he's just a hired mime.
Hired mime.
I'm the best clown money can buy.
Well, here's the other thing. LeBron is an idiot because he's like, 3 killings, all by a mime. But how did the killer get to all these 3 spots in time? And I'm like, there are 3 fucking killers, you idiot. That doesn't occur to you?
Yeah, they're all in disguise, too. It's like it has to be the same person.
Like, he's genuinely perplexed by this. It's like, it's not a great mystery. Also, I'm pretty sure one of these things happened at night and one of them happened during the day.
Oh, yeah.
So I think the greatest mystery is how Duncan's groceries all made it back in that bag.
Yeah.
Because they're completely undisturbed. And his baguette seems fine. Also, he still wants to eat it because I'm sure it landed on the ground.
Yeah. Well, France is known for their clean streets, right? Pristine.
It's not. Also, Inspector Bald maybe provides him with a new one. I don't know.
Yeah, he wiped it off for him a little bit.
Speaking of Baldy, did anyone notice like he is dubbed most of the episode?
Yeah.
Is that what's going on?
That's
with
what's
his
going
voice?
on, and
I
they-
wasn't sure if he was 80-yard or what was going on.
I think he's just dubbed, and I think they do this with a number of characters, as we'll see in the second season, because they hire a bunch of French actors, and I think they have a problem that maybe they just didn't think they were audible enough. Like,
Yeah.
Because I sometimes think Tessa's accent is pretty thick. Like, I think it's
yeah.
totally audible. Like, I don't necessarily
it's
have
a poutry.
the Poutry. I don't have a hard time understanding Tess, but maybe they thought for some of these minor characters, it's like, well, we got to understand them more.
Do you think this actor is doing his own voice, or do you think it's another actor?
I don't know. I didn't see any like IMDb credits.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Hugh Le Forestier. I'm awful with French pronunciation, so forgive me in these next bunch of episodes, listeners.
Yeah, I don't know how to say his name. Sorry. I'm bad at French in general. I have a hard time.
Oui, oui.
See, you're pretty good. So we're now treated to a pretty entertaining flashback, actually,
Yeah.
in this moment where
I was just going to say we're at some French dickhead's chateau.
this guy's kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
But Duncan is acting as a bodyguard for some kind of baron, and is apparently supposed to participate in some kind of negotiations with the English tomorrow.
Right.
So he's like a French dignitary of some kind, and Duncan is his bodyguard. Then these tumblers come in, and these performers come out to entertain the crowd, and they kind of bait this baron into performing. The guy who happens to be an immortal.
And so Duncan doesn't want him to perform, but first the Baron invites him over to have a drink with them. And so
Right.
first we see this guy's signature drink, which is absinthe. He pulls out a flask.
From the Lucchese family.
Right. he pours himself a glass, and the Baron doesn't want to drink any of it. He says, he's like, I don't want madness and death. 2 things, I guess. I mean, it's kind of clever that I guess the writers are like, oh, like, immortals can drink absinthe because they won't be adversely affected by it.
Right.
Because the guy even says, who wants to live forever?
Who wants to live forever, which is fun. Although, I just want to say, absinthe does not cause any of those things. Like, that is a complete, like, myth regarding absinthe causing madness. Wormwood does not really do that sort of stuff to your head. Or you would have to drink so much wormwood. Like, you would have to drink so much absinthe, you would die from alcohol poisoning before there was enough, like, wormwood to, like, affect your system in any sort of bad way. And there's all sorts of reasons why these myths came about absinthe, but this is not absinthe talk. This is Highlander Rewatched, so...
Absinthe Rewatched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't be afraid of absinthe if you want to try some.
Was that the Green Fairy?
Yep, the Green Fairy.
So they bait him into this, like, because this is such a weird line. The Baron's like, oh, I used to be a magician back in my day. And so they're like, oh, well, why don't you come join us?
And Duncan's like, don't do it. Nope.
But this guy, they bait him into it by saying like, oh, well, we'll find a younger, healthier man to do it. So he takes the bait and joins this thing. Best magic trick ever, I guess, then happens next.
Yeah, it's not bad.
So
I don't know how he does it.
Kyler like brings up like a red silk sheet, and the two of them are hiding behind it. And then he drops it, and Kyler is gone, and the Baron just kind of falls over dead with a knife in his back. I don't know how the hell they pull this trick off. Because it's not like, did you build a trap door in this guy's house?
Like in his marble floor?
Yeah, like how did this happen? It's a room full of people, and it's not like you control the space. So Kyler must be very good at this.
He's
I
good.
guess.
And Duncan is very bad at being a bodyguard.
Yeah, worst bodyguard ever, Duncan. He like should have gone up and been up there with him.
Yeah.
Like, don't let him be out of sight with the guy you know is an immortal that you are actively suspicious of.
Yep.
But
Edge up.
But in this case, this idea of being a mime can help lower people's guards works.
Right.
Yeah, works very well. It was a good way to illustrate this concept. My big hanging question at the end of this, though, is when the hell is this?
Yeah.
If we know, right? Because we know that sometime between... we know that he fought for the British in the Napoleonic Wars.
Oh, right.
So he was actively killing Frenchmen in the early 1800s.
Right.
And they have to negotiate with the English. So it's like, this could even be the same period.
According to the Watcher Chronicles, this is in 1783.
1783. So I guess this guy's gonna, like, help negotiate the end of the American Revolution? I don't know. But it's, like, a little strange, because he was decidedly on the opposite end of France pretty soon after this.
Yeah, that's...
He's, like, killing all these guys' kids in, like, 20 years.
Oh, I met your dad.
Bayoneted.
Yep.
So then we come back to the present, and LeBron is finishing up his questioning. And I'm only coming back to this scene just because LeBron seems to make this weird comment about, like, a match, like cigarettes and stuff. And I feel like they make a big deal of it. He's like, do you have a match? And McLeod's like, I don't smoke. And he's like, really? And it's like, no. And then he asks his, like, Inspector Soul for a match, too. And it's like, they seem to make a big deal out of having a match. And I was like, oh, is this going to be a thing?
Nope.
No, it's not a thing. I don't know. It's very strange. I feel like they called a lot of attention to it.
Yeah, I feel like this is probably something that ended up on the cutting room floor, but then not all of it. Maybe they need to make it out to 43 minutes or whatever. So
now we're on the barge. This is our a new location. This, I guess, takes the place of what the antique store served as in Seacouver.
It's a totally sweet location.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So he's right on the river. There's Notre Dame is in the background. This is sweet. Like, all the filming in Paris is so awesome. Just because the city's beautiful. Like, it's a step up from Seacouver in every which way possible.
Yeah. Tess has the barge decorated like a Pier 1 in port.
My only note on this is what is the villain's name followed by this barge is fucking sweet.
Good barge covered in...
But so Tess is a little worried about this murder. She's like, oh, is he coming for you? And he's like, I don't think so, because he's just an assassin. Like, he doesn't play the game like other people do.
Right.
You know, I'm not on his radar or anything like that. But then Tess said something I think that was pretty interesting here. She said, I quote, I think this is official. Read this into the record. When we left the States, I'd hoped the gathering wouldn't find us here. And I was like, oh, this is, again, like, the writers have, I think, backed off, like, and kind of decontextualized, like, the gathering again. Like, in the last episode, they said the gathering is near at hand, making it, like, maybe not quite then, like... And then this time they back off even further, and they're like, it wouldn't find us here. And I don't know if she's just using that term to mean the game, but it's... Does that mean now that the gathering is less about a place and more a time? Like, is everyone just kind of, like, they have an impulse now to, like, if they were out of the game, they want to be in the game now. Like, they, you know, like, everyone's kind of drawn to, like, wrap things up.
I think that's got what it's got to be, just because they're not in the place where in the movies we know the gathering happens.
Right.
So, like, it can't be that. It's I think it is just that everyone's, like, more active or, like, drawn together. Or maybe there's that, you know, the mini tournament idea that we had. Well, can Duncan win the French bracket? Find out.
Well, here's my thought about, like, Tess thinking there might not... I mean, maybe this isn't what she means. Like, I would think that there would be more, or at least older, immortals in Europe than in America, just because Europe's Europe and it's been around for so long. I don't know.
Think so too, because anyone who's ancient, who's coming from like most of these civilizations, like the population in like the old world would have been an order of magnitude higher than in the Americas. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. That this would be where the old badasses hang.
The old badasses.
The old badass.
Like Darius, who is of course hanging out in France.
Yeah.
Quite an old badass.
Richie brings in this hideous giant bust of Napoleon that he got at a flea market, and he calls it a barge warming present, which I thought was fantastic. I actually thought this whole exchange was really great, like, because obviously Tess hates it, and she's like, it's just like, he's like, don't you like it? She's like, it's very historical.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the writing, it's not like great humor or anything, but it's
fun.
It's fun.
Well, it's just they're finding a voice for people. Like, Richie is not annoying in this scene. Like, he is actually kind of funny. Yeah. And, you know, he kind of has a rapport with everyone. Yeah.
So Richie is loving Paris. And so we should play a clip of what Richie thinks of the French ladies.
Gay Paris.
You know, I have a very strange feeling that Paris and I are going to be quite good for each other, if you guys know what I mean. I think it's something about the Parisians. You know, they're so very, very, very French. They carry automatic weapons.
What?
Mac, get over here, check this out.
Duncan's face. He's like putting forks on the table, and he just goes like, He looks so defeated. He's like, now I have to go deal with some Frenchmen with automatic weapons.
Very, very French, those Parisians. Nice warm barge.
Yeah, also another Canadian tuxedo being worn by Richie. He's got the denim on denim.
He's rocking it.
Yeah.
So Duncan goes to investigate what's going on here, and it turns out these dudes with automatic weapons are cops.
Which, the worst cops ever.
Oh, yeah. They don't sneak up well at all. And, yeah, he dispatches all of them.
And what the fuck is he doing? Like, why are they like, trying to raid this boat? Why doesn't someone just go up and knock
on the door?
It's like, hey, here's this witness who cooperated with you. Let's go try to shoot him.
Yeah, what is their plan? Are they trying to have, like, a stakeout?
Well, LeBrun
Does he think Kyler's going to show up there?
LeBrun might think that McLeod is involved because of the last incident. Because LeBrun, turns out, remembers where he thought he saw McLeod before. Did we say that LeBrun?
That is happening in this scene that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I think, he mentions that he seems to remember him from other times. So then we have a flashback. This is a great flashback. This is the first time we've flashbacked, like, not far. It's like...
No, not the first, but it is a great flashback. Because we flashback in the episode with Walter Reinhardt, Revenge is Sweet. We flashback, like, 1 year.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
The fight on New Year's.
Right. So we flash back to 1980, and so we get to see 1980s Duncan, which is pretty sweet.
Which is mullet denim Duncan.
Yeah.
He looks like he was like a sailor or something. He's got like a vest.
He's like a stevedore or something. He's like working on the docks.
Yeah. So him and Reinhardt.
Oh, he has a leather vest. Did you say that?
No, I did not say that.
Duncan's wearing a leather vest.
I thought it was denim.
No, I think
I
Eamon's right. It's leather.
So he's not
leather.
mullet denim Duncan.
He is wearing denim also.
So they reveal at some point that I guess Kyler has murdered the president of a bank or something.
Yeah.
And so somehow Duncan is involved in this plot.
Yep.
And he's fighting Kyler, and he doesn't have a sword.
He has a pipe.
He has a pipe, so they go at it in this like glass tower, which is kind of cool looking.
The room is awesome. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's supposed to be.
Another awesome location that they found, though. They must have just have like really good like location scouts on this. Like I don't know what it is, but they're like pretty close to batting 1,000 on this show in terms of finding.
Yeah, they find good
places,
spots,
especially to shoot these fights. And this fight is kind of cool.
Yeah,
because it's like kind of asymmetric. Like Duncan way off his game because he doesn't have a sword. Here's a quick question though: why does Kyler not waste him from jump? Because like Duncan kind of runs up some spiral stairs into this cool glass building, and Kyler's there. We see him kind of for the first time without his makeup.
Yeah,
he's wearing like a white scarf, and Kyler basically has his sword like on Duncan's throat, like it's essentially resting there. And then he's like, well, there can be only one. And he, like, cranes his arm way back. And Duncan, of course, just basically walks out of the way. Like, why doesn't he just, like, move his wrist, like, half an inch and, like, cut Duncan's throat and then cut his head off. Like, what was the... Like, it makes, like, this giant dramatic flourish, so of course Duncan gets away. But anyway, and ran about that one.
So then Duncan, fights him with the pipe and then runs away, and he jumps through a plate glass window, and he basically runs into LeBrun's car, or he's like on the hood or something.
Yeah,
Is
he
that right?
smashes through the window and then like flips over the car.
Yeah.
And like the young, not yet Baldy is like, oh, hi.
Yeah.
And then they like have like a moment of staring at each other, and then Duncan
Bolts.
bolts. Yeah.
So as Duncan runs away, he ends up jumping on a tour boat, and Tess is the
The tour guide.
Boat Captain Tessa.
Yup.
Yeah, she's got a
Very
whole
nautical episode.
get up going.
So let's play the clip of them meeting, I guess. This magic moment. This magic moment.
What do you think you're doing?
I didn't want to miss the tour.
Is this the way you always make an entrance?
I didn't make an impression.
You have. Bravo. You could have been hurt. There's another boat in 15 minutes.
I wanted this one.
I'm sorry for this interruption, ladies and gentlemen. I told you Paris was full of surprises.
Not captured here is Duncan being a total condescending asshole and like mansplaining to Tess when the Notre Dame Cathedral was built.
Also, he's shouting at her during this tour, and none of the other people on this tour are looking at him. Like,
He's being like even when he jumps on the boat and like
Yeah.
hops over the rail,
Nobody
no one
cares.
pays any
Yeah.
attention to him but Tess. So yeah,
I like the way he explains when Notre Dame was built, or not. I mean, he explains it by telling her the correct date, but she's so appalled. She's like, "How do you know?" And it's like, because you're wrong. You're just wrong. Like, she just flat out says the wrong date. Like,
is that? I mean, I didn't go back and look it up. Is
oh
he
yeah,
right?
like it's not like they retconned the actual build. Like Duncan has some secret inside information because he's really old. And he's like, they didn't really finish it then. I was there. Like, I saw they weren't quite done yet. It's like, no, she just says, like, straight up the wrong date. And Duncan's like, no, wrong date. And she's like, how do you know that? It's like, well, because you're just wrong. Like, I just read it. Like,
in a book.
in a book. But this scene's cute. I don't know. Duncan's got puppy dog eyes.
Why would
It's adorable.
Why would you like him in this? I don't know. Like, if some guy came to where I worked and like disrupted everything,
Yeah.
and then
he yelled at me.
yeah,
Like,
it's like, hey, I'm gonna move across the world with you.
yeah. Love at first sight.
Yep.
Or first bite because he was eating pretzels. Ugh, sorry.
So back on the barge in present day, Richie's trying to set up his stupid bust. And I guess it works out. This time Duncan actually does have like insider info that could help with this investigation. Like we talked about in, what was the episode? See No Evil, where there was the serial killer. And it was like Duncan didn't provide any sort of like special insight into that. Like
Nope.
he just knew all the stuff the cops, like it's not like he knew the mind of the killer really or anything like that. In this one, Duncan's the only person that actually knows what Kyler looks like.
Because in that flashback, he actually did get to see him without makeup.
Right. So that's like the Duncan advantage in this. And again, he's not quite telling the police, which I'm not sure why, but
Yeah.
Well, he kind of does. He says he admits that he could identify the guy.
right.
And
But he doesn't want to describe him, I guess.
Yeah, well, he does kind of describe him as well. So like, he's not really holding out. I mean, he doesn't say like he's an immortal and I fought him in a weird glass thing 10 years ago, but
Richie doesn't really believe that Duncan has a lead. He says to Duncan, the CIA and the Intergalactic Space Patrol can't find him, but Duncan MacLeod can. What? What does that mean?
yeah. Also, you're not in the United States, so
Yeah.
why are you concerned with the CIA and the Intergalactic Space Patrol? Like, what is this about?
That's not a thing. You're not in space. What the fuck are you talking about?
So Duncan realizes a way to kind of track down Kyler is he gets out a phone book and he's looking up specialty liquor shops in Paris. And he thinks that the way to get them is through absinthe, which he knows is his signature drink. And so he needs to find someone that deals in absinthe.
Which at this point in French history is illegal.
Yes.
Why is it illegal?
Because we're back to welcome to Absinthe Talk.
Absinthe Rewatched.
Yep. Absinthe was made illegal. I guess it was shortly after the French Revolution. And there's a lot of weird reasons. Like, they blamed it on people being crazy. Like, it would make people crazy. But part of the reason is...
I think it was 1915 was the official ban.
Oh, the official ban?
Was the official ban.
Oh,
1915 to 2011.
Wow.
Maybe some bad press after the French Revolution.
It was associated with, like, Bohemians.
Exactly,
and, like,
yeah. The
rebels.
Bohemians would drink it. There's also some other like theories that at the time the French winemakers, there was like a big a drought, and so wine production went really down, and absinthe became like the cheapest drink, and so everybody started drinking absinthe, and it was a way for the winemakers were trying to retaliate to gain back their business, so they started all these rumors about the things that absinthe could do to you, all this stuff. There's a legendary story about some guy that like just drank shot after shot after shot of absinthe. Like, the story goes that like the bartender like was keeping track of how much this guy was drinking. He wasn't doing shots and shots of absinthe. He was just drinking. And the very last thing he drank was a shot of absinthe. And then he went home and murdered his whole family. And they apparently brought that up at the trial, that it was like, look what absinthe made this guy do. It's like, well, the guy was completely blasted. Anyway, there's a lot of like myth and lore about absinthe and wormwood and all this stuff.
It also does get you completely blasted, though, because it is incredibly alcoholic.
Yeah.
Like, it is a very strong drink.
So he finally comes across a liquor specialty shop where he can get some of the good stuff.
Yeah, on the sly, because obviously it's illegal at this point.
Right.
So he kind of describes Kyler to this guy and then kind of ingratiates himself with him and gets the guy to kind of spill the beans on when Kyler's going to be back next to pick up a fresh supply.
Then we cut to Kyler's base of operations, which is in a mannequin warehouse.
Right?
It's awesome. I loved this. I was
Really?
As soon as I saw it, I was like, they're going to fight here. I'm really excited about it. I thought it was super cool. And it fits in really well with Duncan's earlier speech about Kyler. It's like, he's not really a fighter. Like, he's an assassin. He uses trickery. He uses all these different things. And it's like, this is perfect because this will be his opportunity. If he was ever going to fight Duncan, this is how he'd have to do it.
Yeah, and it's creepy.
It's super creepy. It's like horror movie shit.
Yeah, it is creepy.
There's a really good Stanley Kubrick movie that has a sequence, a really early one with all these mannequins, very similar. I forget what it's called. Look that up, folks. So they're basically, he's having a meeting with his mime henchmen.
And a police mole. Turns out that
Inspector Soul is up to no
mole.
good, and he's working.
started causing trouble in this neighborhood. And you're welcome. So he comes and kind of rats on the investigation, and that's how they find out that McLeod is out there and can ID them.
Right.
Right.
So his goon tries to assassinate Duncan.
Poorly. Very,
Very poorly. He
very
drives up on a
shoddy
motorcycle, and he ends up shooting LeBron in the arm.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the arm.
And Duncan kind of administers some first aid or whatever until an ambulance comes by.
So we're now back in the mannequin factory again, and Kyler is livid at this guy for attempting to kill Duncan. Because obviously Kyler knows he wasn't going to succeed. And because he also even failed to kill LeBron. And there's this kind of cool scene where, like, you think he's going to forgive him, and then he ends up plugging him. And he calls this, like, this giant domino rally with all the mannequins. It's kind of funny.
I wanted to mention a funny conversation that Duncan and Tess have together. I guess at some point Tess breaks off screen the bust of Napoleon. And, and Duncan is like, we should just tell Richie the truth that you smashed it because you hated it. And Tess is all upset. She's like, no, it was an accident. I knocked it off the table. And then she says, anyone who has any taste in art would hate it. And I was just like, this is coming from Tess. I think we can go on record. The world's like worst artist ever. She's like, anyone who has any taste in art would hate this garbage.
Spray painted donuts. That is the height of art. What is this marble looking bust?
This isn't metallic silver at all.
So then I guess the Detective Baldy is injured badly.
Yep.
And I guess this bullet shattered his arm, he says. And he makes
Yeah.
it seem like he is going to be down for the count
Right.
forever and ever.
He's not very grateful to McLeod for saving his life.
He's in fact a huge asshole.
Yeah.
Like, this
Oh,
guy
yeah.
is just a jerk, frankly. Like, he shows up at the house with, like, to threaten him with assault weapons.
Yep.
He's constantly on his case, and now he's, like, saying, like, I'll never be, like, chief of police now.
Right.
Because my arm is hurt.
Yeah. No one wants a police chief who can't hold a gun.
A, you've got two hands. B, the chief of police is ever holding a gun. Huge problem.
Yeah.
Why does the chief of police need the gun? It's kind of a desk job.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
regardless, also, why isn't the story hero cop saves French artist?
Yeah.
Or saves witness in murder case,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
what Duncan is.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is this works out pretty well for you. Quit being a dick.
Yep.
There's a weird interstitial scene that I love when they just cut away to other, like, just nonsense. They cut away from, like, this discussion, and it's just Kyler. He pours himself a shot of absinthe, drinks it, and they cut away. It's just like, what's happening? Like, there was no point.
To continue with the theme of absinthe rewatched, wasn't the absinthe was always, every time he poured it, was always, like, pale and cloudy.
Yes.
But you need to, like, actually add, like, the sugar and, like...
And the water is
Water.
what makes it cloudy. Like, yeah, so for those non-absinthe, this really is becoming an absinthe episode. So absinthe is usually pretty clear. It's like usually a dark to light green. And then when you add water to it, it's what's called the luge effect. And it gets like a milky, cloudy color. And that's because that's because certain compounds are only, alcoholic compounds are only water soluble, not alcohol soluble. So when you add the water, they like come to life essentially. So that's why it has that sort of like fantastic, light green color. But yeah, his absinthe is always light green and it's always milky. It's like, it's not right.
Yeah, somebody just, like, saw it once and was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We can make something that looks like that.
Yeah,
with
it's
food
probably just
coloring.
milk and like
Yeah.
water and green food dye mixed together.
Yummy.
Let's have a nice glass of that after recording. Kyler goes to re-up on some absinthe, and the shop owner's like, oh, I hope your friend liked his absinthe, referring to McLeod. And Kyler's like, what?
Yeah, for a guy engaged in illegal enterprise, he's pretty loose-lipped about this whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, I guess he's trying to explain to us, like, both of them are in illegal enterprises getting this absinthe. I guess he was being like, oh, I know your other friend who buys illegal booze.
So Kyler's now wise and leaves and sees McLeod at a church across the street.
Where he was camped out because the guy had previously told him he'd be there on that day to
Yeah, so
pick up his order.
Mac's been staking the place out. So we get some backstory on Kyler. He's an assassin. He's been one for a long time. It's the thing he excelled at most. He said he wanted to be a singer, but just wasn't quite good enough. So
instead, he killed 2,760 people.
yep.
That's a lot. That's just mortals. Who knows how many more immortals he got.
Yeah, and then he threatens to murder like children across
Yep.
the street.
Yeah, so he's, super evil.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's
if
pretty
killing
bad.
for money wasn't enough,
Also,
this is also bad.
Duncan's wearing a white turtleneck, and Kyler has a black turtleneck on.
Oh, and then there's another weird interstitial scene. Sorry, there's a bunch of these. Sorry, I always note these. So Duncan and Tess end up having this conversation where Tess is like, I want to cancel my board presentation. He's like, we have to keep living our lives. That's the whole scene. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
great, boring. And then they cut to Kyler in the mannequin warehouse, and he just cuts the head off a mannequin. And
Yep.
then they cut back. So there's these like vaguely threatening scenes they throw in. Like I think they thought they had like cool imagery, which it is cool. It's like, oh, him cutting the head off a mannequin is
Yeah,
like
that's cool.
a fun image, but they never put it into some sort of like context or something. So they just shot this stuff and they're like, yeah, we'll just throw it in there. It's a way to like transition from, I guess, unrelated scenes.
Yeah, it's weird.
So Inspector Trader comes to the barge and is like, oh, come with me. LeBron wants to see you.
Yeah, and Max he gives himself away because Mac mentions Kyler's drinking, and Soul's like, yeah, well, that absinthe or whatever.
Yeah, he's like, that'll kill him.
Yeah.
So
This is the dumbest guy ever.
Yep.
Like, why would Mac know this? Why would you share it? Like, it's the worst henchman ever. People just people in this show just need to keep their mouths shut ever.
Yep.
I mean, I know that's not the best TV, I guess, but everyone just like, being a blabbermouth is like a plot device.
Yep.
In this. It's just that, like, it's like the movie Liar Liar.
So Soul drops off Mac at the mannequin warehouse.
Yep.
And then he drives away, and then Soul gets confronted by LeBron, and they square off with each other. And he's like, "Where did you take Mac?" And he's like, "What makes you think I took him anywhere?" And he screams, he's like, "'Cause I put a radio transmitter on your car."
Yeah.
And it's I don't know, I thought it was funny.
He threatens Soul with life imprisonment. Earlier in the episode, he threatens Duncan with life imprisonment, and he threatens people with this again and again and again on these episodes that he's on.
Then he doubles down. He's like, not only that, like, we found the money in your Swiss bank account.
Right.
Which, no, you didn't.
Yeah, how do they find it? And isn't that the point of a Swiss bank account?
That is the whole goddamn point, is that if you ask the Swiss government for these bank records, they tell you to pound sand. Like, that is why they exist. Because there would not be Swiss bank accounts in the sense that we think of them if they just gave it up to anyone who asked. Like, that would defeat the entire purpose. But this guy's such a boob anyway that he wouldn't know. He'd go, "Oh, do I have a Swiss bank account? I do have a bank. Is it in Switzerland?"
So Kyler and Duncan end up having a fight in the mannequin factory.
Yep.
Kyler's wearing like a leather studded jacket. Like,
Yeah.
He's got this like weird punk rock mime
Punk rock mime.
thing going on.
Another better episode title.
Punk rock mime. It's very funny to me. Can that be a movie, Punk Rock Mime?
Yep.
It's up there with Nundercover.
Yeah. So they have a fight. They're cutting up mannequins left and right, and they use the same shattering sound over and over and over and over.
I'll go on record. I hate this fight. I don't like this one at all. I think this is maybe one of the weakest fights we have had. It's like really anticlimactic. I don't think there's like any tension. Like they just kind of swing swords at each other. Then just Duncan puts the blade to Kyler's neck, and he shrugs. I remember this vividly. Duncan has the blade to Kyler's neck. He shrugs and then chops his head off. It's like, whoop, sorry, bud. And that's kind of it. Like, I don't know. I feel like they could have at least included some dialogue. Like, there was no real dialogue. Like, I didn't think there was a lot of, like, tension built up in this. Especially after seeing the Grayson fight, which is so great.
Yeah.
So I agree and I disagree. I loved the location. I thought that this was a cool idea for them to play with. I feel like they just ran out of time. Like if we had not spent so much time on these like interstitial cuts of like him drinking absinthe, we would have had more time here. And I feel like they just needed to play up this trickery element more. Like it'd be cool to actually see Kyler get the upper hand on him, and that could have been a good source of tension. Or really draw out how long it was before they started fighting. Like the fight starts, they have like a very brief kind of face-to-face interaction. It would have been much cooler if that didn't happen and Duncan was just kind of wandering around this mannequin factory and the whole time you're waiting for Kyler to appear, maybe milk that moment, or just have like a bunch of very short, brief, actual sword contacts and then he's just back hiding and, you know, using some actual trickery here. Because that was kind of the point of the whole thing that they had set up of how this guy fights. And I think that was fertile ground for them to play with. They do it a teeny tiny bit, but like they just kind of didn't commit to it or didn't give it the time you need to develop a fight like that into something interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think Kyler could have been a really, like, as silly as this mime thing is, he could have been a cool villain just based on his, like, deception and all that sort of, like, the trickery. Yeah, it could have been good.
Yeah, and part of me almost wishes that they didn't quite marry so hard to the mime thing. Like, maybe that's like a theme and variation. Like, the mime is one example of how he
just
does
in that
this.
one instance, he was a mime, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, that served his purpose, and in other instances, he's whatever he needs to be.
A clown.
A clown.
Or a sports mascot.
Duncan wins pretty easily.
Quickening, some mannequins blow up.
Yeah, so Duncan runs off. He takes Kyler's sword, books it out of there.
Once again, this entire cop plot just comes completely unraveled. Like, it's just, once again, a lantern is hung on just how silly it is. Because Detective Baldy comes back and is just... he's saying like, oh, like we found Kyler with how was the mannequin factory, like his head was chopped off,
Yeah.
blah blah blah, and he says something to the and Soul says you were there, and Duncan's like, oh, I don't know, and,
Why
like,
do you believe him now?
Yeah, and like Tess comes in and like vouches for Duncan's whereabouts. And Cue Ball's just like, oh, well, I can't prove it. Like, you win this round.
But I know you decapitated this man in a fucking factory.
Yeah, it's like, I was just like, no wonder you couldn't catch Kyler. You're the worst fucking detective on the planet. You were terrible at this. Think about this. He's got a decapitated body. He's got a witness who says that he dropped McLeod off there. You already knew that he had chased Kyler in the past and was connected to this incident. Like, you've got all this evidence. You could absolutely do things like that actual cops do. Like, I don't know, get a warrant. Yeah. Or apparently warrants don't matter that much to you if you were willing to jump his barge with armed guys with automatic weapons anyway. Like, maybe you don't even play by the rules, but you could.
Yeah.
Like, you could absolutely search this thing. And what do you think you're going to find? Oh, this guy's got multiple swords? Oh my. Oh, it's just, all he needs is a black light, and Duncan is fucked. So, I was just saying, it's like, this cop thing just has to go.
Yeah.
Because it just, like, they're not, it's not tight enough that Duncan is actually outfoxing them, but, like, the cops just keep bellying up. Like, he's not outsmarting them in any way.
Yeah, no. Well, this is the guy that couldn't figure out there could be more than one mime, so...
Right.
He couldn't mime his way out of a paper bag.
So then he escorts LeBrun out. Duncan seems kind of exasperated, and then he goes, cheers.
Scene.
And I thought that was funny. Yeah.
It's just one extra side note. Not only does LeBron think he decapitated this man, he has a good reason to think that Duncan is a goddamn terrorist. Right?
Yeah.
Because of the connection to the earlier incident and the fact that he happens to be around during the assassination of the dignitaries related to that incident. So, like, you have every incentive in the world. Like, this is... Like, you have reason to think this is one of the most dangerous men in Paris, and you're like...
Yeah, well,
You beat me this round, guy.
I'll get you next time.
Yeah, this was a fun episode, I think.
Yeah.
All in all, pretty
Enjoyable.
good. I don't have too much behind the scenes stuff. The only thing is from the Watcher Chronicles, which just says Kyler was born in 1639 in Munich. So he's kind of old.
Huh.
That's about it. So,
Very good.
This has been Absinthe Rewatched.
yeah. A lot of
Mime
absent
time.
facts in this one. A lot of mime action.
So you all only got to see half the episode too, because we've actually been miming the entire conversation.
Oh, we should have mimed everything.
We did mime everything.
All
Keith.
mime, all the time.
All mime.
Another better episode title than For Evil's Sake.
Awesome. Well, make sure if you're out there, you're hearing us in your ears. It's like I'm calling the stars. If you're out there. Anyway, follow us on Facebook, Highlander Rewatched, on Twitter at The Rewatchers, and on Instagram at Highlander Rewatched. If you have any comments for this episode or others, make sure to share them with us, and we'll read them on air. You can email us at highlanderrewatched@gmail.com. And once again, follow us on Facebook. That's the big one where we post all sorts of pictures, clips, and you get to interact with other Highlander fans from around the world. Actually, I want to do like a shout out to like everybody from around the world who listens to this. It's like pretty cool. Like everyone who interacts on the Facebook page, like we have people from France, Germany, the UK, Colombia. We have some Japanese listeners too. Obviously some here in America. Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, Highlander's one of those shows that has like a true international audience, unlike a lot of other shows. So it's pretty neat.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we appreciate you.
Yeah, very cool. I know we hit 500 likes on Facebook this week or last week or whenever it was. But that was pretty cool. So thanks everybody for that. And we'll see you next week for Tomorrow We Die. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
See ya.
I can't.
Stop. I love him.